It's a pleasure to follow the noble Lord Carrington, and I'd like to thank my noble friend, the Minister, for her helpful introduction to take us through the bill. Before speaking, I should declare my interest, as in the Register of Interests. I am and have been a landlord, as well as a tenant and a leaseholder. I am not, I'm afraid, confident that this bill will do what the explanatory memorandum in paragraph 1 says it aims to do: to ensure private renters have access to a secure and decent home, and that landlords retain the confidence to possess their properties when they have good reason to. I think we all agree with this aim. It's a very important aim, and the government is right to want it. But I'm not sure that the bill is the best method for achieving it. Rather, in my view, it will make for uncertainty in a number of ways. Here are some of them: the ending of assured fixed-term tenancies under the 1988 Act, the end of no-fault eviction, Section 21, yet the introduction of alternative provision for landlords to repossess their properties when the bill says they have good reason to do so, the provision for a two-stage transition period for these arrangements, the second stage uncertain, to be fixed by the Secretary of State once the arrangements for the courts have been changed to accommodate the new system. Other problems have been discussed by other noble lords. Lord Etherton, to the powers granted to local authorities to impose fines of £30,000, powers which are properly, and I would agree and urge your lordships to think along the same lines, properly for the courts to impose. Lord Malsford, to the implications for privacy on the data which will be collected on individuals. Lord Adonis, to the pressure on the courts, and indeed other noble lords like Lord Carrington. Lord Truscott, to the costs for the private landlords. Like Lord Malsford, the noble Earl Lord Lytton, and my noble friend Lord Frost, I am particularly concerned about ending assured fixed-term leases. I'll focus on this, which I see as to be the most problematic and unsettling proposal in the bill: the abolition of assured fixed-term tenancies under the 1988 Act, which lays down that tenancies can be periodic, renewable after the rent period, typically a month, or fixed term. And we've heard today about some of the length of the tenancies which are already in use and popular. This arrangement gives both landlord and tenant the security of knowing how long their letting is for, and the option to propose and agree a variation to reflect wishes and circumstances, including renewal if they wish. Instead, the bill proposes that in future all tenants will be on a single system of periodic tenancies, which are little more than a rolling tenancy of a month, where tenants give notice of leaving and landlords cannot provide any notice of ending the lease other than on the stipulated reasonable grounds set out in the legislation. This is conceived in the bill as part of a package along with abolishing no-fault evictions. The overall aim is said to give greater security to the tenant, to deal with problematic landlords who use no-fault evictions to end the tenancies. I understand that was a manifesto commitment by the Conservative government, but getting rid of fixed-term tenancies was not a manifesto commitment, and as other noble lords have pointed out, it is unnecessary to do so, given the aims of this bill. Yes, there are bad landlords. The problem can and should be addressed, but you don't need to overturn the arrangements under settled law to address the problem of shameful properties let in appalling conditions. I disagree with the Secretary of State, who told the House of Commons it is a conservative measure in the tradition of measures introduced by Conservative Prime Ministers. Previous measures were based on the principles of common law and the protections it offers both parties, while improving on how they operated. Labour's Rent Act 1977 did not permit no-fault eviction, but subsequent Conservative measures, the Housing Act 1988, did by introducing the concept of the assured short-hold tenancy only when complex notice procedures were followed, while the Housing Act 1996 introduced amendments to make the assured short-hold tenancy the default option, unless the parties agreed to the tenancy. And I'm grateful here to iHouse and the KC Andrew Butler, who made available to Parliament an analysis of the background and who have provided a more nuanced proposal than that provided in the bill. What I would like to say is that what we have seen is the extension of the private rental sector to account for 1 in 5 households. It seems rather silly, to put it mildly, to end the arrangements on which the private sector rental section is based and has succeeded so well and mushroomed since the 1980s. My lords, the less interference in a free society by the state between people making contracts with each other, the better, rather than the politicising transactions that should be in an area that should be a politics-free zone under the principles and protections of settled law. Yes, there should be regulation against unfair contracts. People should be able to enter into a contract with full knowledge, should know what they are taking on, each party, tenant and landlord. Entering into agreement with each other with full knowledge, openly protected by law, should be for them to decide. Tenants should be able to stipulate their conditions, and so should landlords, and an agreement met. I agree that fixed-term tenancies should be an option for landlord and tenant alike. And may I, if your lordships will bear with me for a minute, I've been a commercial tenant for our think tank, and we have been on the receiving end of a request to end a lease early, not an obligation, and the landlord made a generous offer of a few months' rent-free period, which gave us a cushion on which to perhaps find a more expensive property and have the confidence and have sorted out the problems before the lease would have otherwise come to an end. And indeed, I've been on the receiving. I have asked a landlord during the pandemic, when the service charges amounted to more than the cost of the lease per annum, could we leave because of our not-for-profit status being charitably funded? And in both cases, these requests were met with due consideration by the tenant and the landlord, I being the tenant and the landlord being another one, making an offer on another occasion, and in both occasions without any interference or bureaucracy by the courts, which is what it should be when we enter into a transaction, two parties to a transaction in this country under the rule of law. I hope we can amend this measure to leave in place fixed-term assured tenancies so that landlords and tenants alike will have the option of certainty needed, if they want it, of a fixed-term lease, and the security that this bill aims for can be achieved by compensation clauses, giving tenants a period rent-free, for instance, in the case of non-fault eviction. Such arrangements leave in place the clarity of contractual arrangements, rather than replacing them with a cocktail of written statements, responsibilities, letters, property portals, an ombudsman, the individual parts of which will become opaque under the bureaucracy that will surely follow in the bill's wake. That is, unless, with your lordship's help, we can ensure the real security at which this bill aims.
Yeah.